What if your belly fat is not a sign that you are failing? What if it is actually a sign that your body is working exactly as designed, protecting you from a threat that does not exist anymore? You have tried the diets, you have done the cardio, you've cut the sugar, tracked the calories, and pushed yourself through workouts that left you wrecked for days. And still, the belly stays. Hard, stubborn, and completely indifferent to your effort. Most people at this point conclude that something is wrong with them. Their willpower is weak, their genetics are bad, their metabolism is broken. None of that is true. What is actually happening is far more interesting and far more solvable once you understand it. Your body is not broken. It is running a survival program written 200,000 years ago. And until you learn to speak its language, you will keep fighting a war you were never supposed to win through effort alone. Today, we are going inside that program. We are going to understand exactly why visceral fat exists, what chemical architecture built it, and precisely what it takes to convince your body to finally let it go. The hidden enemy. When most people think about body fat, they think about the layer they can grab, the soft tissue under the skin covering the arms, the thighs, the waist. This is subcutaneous fat, and while it affects appearance, it is largely metabolically passive. It sits there. It is not particularly dangerous. But there is another category of fat entirely, one you cannot see or pinch, one that wraps itself directly around your liver, your pancreas, and your intestines. This is visceral fat, and it behaves nothing like the fat on the surface. Visceral fat is not a storage unit. It is a biologically active tissue. It secretes inflammatory molecules called cytokines into your bloodstream. It disrupts insulin signaling. It places direct mechanical pressure on your organs, and it communicates with your hormonal system in ways that actively interfere with your health at every level. The distinction matters enormously because the strategies that reduce subcutaneous fat and the strategies that reduce visceral fat are not the same, and most conventional fitness advice is aimed at the wrong target entirely. The architect, cortisol. To understand visceral fat, you have to understand the hormone that built it. That hormone is cortisol. In modern wellness culture, cortisol has been cast as a villain, something to suppress, eliminate, and apologize for. But that framing misses the full picture. Cortisol is one of the most sophisticated survival tools in human biology. For hundreds of thousands of years, it kept our ancestors alive. When the brain detected danger, whether a predator, a rival group, or a sudden food shortage, it activated a hormonal cascade known as the HPA axis. The hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenal glands coordinated a full-body emergency response. Digestion stopped, reproduction paused, muscle repair halted. Every available resource was redirected toward one priority: immediate survival. Here is where the story gets particularly relevant to your belly. Evolution needed a reliable energy reserve close to the body's most vital organs. Fat stored on the legs or arms was inefficient during physical emergencies. The liver, the body's central processing plant, needed fuel nearby and accessible instantly. So the body developed a concentrated cluster of cortisol receptors, called glucocorticoid receptors, deep inside the abdominal cavity. When cortisol rose, these receptors acted like powerful magnets, pulling fat from circulation and anchoring it directly around the internal organs. Visceral fat was not a mistake. It was a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering. It was the emergency fuel reserve, positioned exactly where the body needed it most. For a hunter-gatherer surviving on unpredictable resources, this was the difference between life and death.
The problem is brutally simple. Your survival hardware has not changed in 10,000 years, but your environment has changed completely. There are no predators, there is no famine, but there are deadlines, financial pressure, social comparison, disrupted sleep, artificial light, and a constant stream of digital noise designed specifically to trigger urgency and anxiety. The threats look completely different, but your body cannot tell the difference. A cortisol spike triggered by a tense email looks chemically identical to a cortisol spike triggered by a predator. The response is the same. The fat storage signal is the same. And here is what makes the modern version far more destructive than anything our ancestors faced. Ancient stress was acute, intense, brief, and followed by resolution. You either escaped the threat or you did not. In either case, the cortisol cleared, the nervous system reset, and the body returned to baseline. Modern stress is chronic. It is low-grade, constant, and never fully resolved. Cortisol never returns to baseline. The body remains in a permanent, simmering state of emergency. And in that state, the fat storage machinery never switches off. The liver keeps releasing glucose for a physical confrontation that never comes. The pancreas keeps releasing insulin to clear that glucose. And insulin, in the presence of elevated cortisol, has only one destination for that energy: the visceral fat cells waiting with their cortisol receptors fully open. You are trapped in a biological loop, endlessly preparing for a famine that is never coming, while the belly grows harder and more resistant with every passing month. Two additional mechanisms make this trap even more difficult to escape through conventional methods alone. The first is what physiologists call the pregnenolone steal. Cortisol production is so critical to survival that the body prioritizes it above almost everything else. Cortisol is manufactured from a precursor hormone called pregnenolone, but pregnenolone is also the raw material for your sex hormones, testosterone and estrogen. When chronic stress keeps cortisol demand high, the body diverts pregnenolone away from sex hormone production to keep up. Testosterone and estrogen crash. Muscle begins to break down. The body converts that muscle tissue into glucose through gluconeogenesis, and that glucose gets redirected straight into visceral storage. This explains a phenotype that is increasingly common: thin arms, thin legs, and a heart-distended belly. This is not random weight gain. This is the body structurally reorganizing itself according to a survival blueprint designed for the Stone Age. The second layer is a neuropeptide called neuropeptide Y. Under sustained stress, the brain releases this molecule specifically to drive cravings for dense, fast-digesting carbohydrates. When you reach for comfort food during stressful periods, it's not weakness, it's a biochemical instruction as compelling as the drive to breathe. The body is trying to replenish what it perceives as emergency fuel expenditure. Fighting this signal through willpower alone is not a strategy, it's a losing battle against chemistry. The solution: signal safety. You cannot cut visceral fat off through aggression. Extreme caloric restriction signals famine. Chronic steady-state cardio mimics the physiological stress of a prolonged hunt. Both approaches raise cortisol further and tighten the grip on visceral storage. The only effective path is convincing your nervous system that the emergency is over. The first tool is low-intensity movement, specifically walking. Walking is the biological baseline of the human body in a safe, exploratory state. When you walk forward and the visual landscape flows naturally past your peripheral vision, it sends a direct signal to the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, that you are moving through open space with agency and safety. Cortisol steps back. The nervous system shifts into parasympathetic mode. The fat storage signal softens. Paired with this, heavy resistance training provides the essential anabolic counterweight. Lifting sends a potent hormonal signal that directly opposes the muscle-wasting, fat-storing effects of cortisol. It drives testosterone and growth hormone production. It rebuilds insulin receptor sensitivity, giving glucose a destination other than the visceral cavity. Without this anabolic signal, cortisol management alone will reduce fat slowly. With it, the process accelerates significantly.
Nutritional timing matters as much as nutritional content. Cortisol follows a natural circadian arc, highest in the morning, lowest at night.
Eating a high-protein breakfast supports neurotransmitter function and sets a clean metabolic pace without an insulin spike. Strategically shifting complex carbohydrates toward the evening meal triggers serotonin release, which converts to melatonin, lowering the evening cortisol spike and allowing the body to fully enter repair mode during sleep. Sleep is not passive recovery. One single night of poor sleep reduces insulin sensitivity by up to 40%. Your body interprets sleep deprivation as a physiological injury, raising baseline cortisol the following day and immediately triggering visceral storage. Protecting sleep is not a lifestyle luxury, it is a direct metabolic intervention. Finally, address the micronutrient layer. Magnesium is the first mineral depleted under chronic stress, and its deficiency creates a hypersensitive cortisol response. Replenishing it through supplementation or whole food sources, alongside adaptogenic compounds like ashwagandha, measurably lowers serum cortisol over time. Visceral fat is not evidence of personal failure. It is physical proof that your survival system is functioning exactly as evolution intended, in a world that no longer matches the instructions. You do not need more discipline, you need to change the signal. Optimize sleep, walk daily, lift heavy, eat in alignment with your circadian rhythm. Replenish the minerals stress depletes, and learn to activate the parasympathetic state through controlled breathing, cold exposure, and deliberate rest. Do these things consistently, and you are not simply losing weight, you are turning off a 200,000-year-old emergency alarm. And when that alarm finally goes silent, the belly fat has no biological reason left to stay.